Highway with Hensel Construction. And we're going to spend the next half hour just giving you a quick lessons learned, how we started and where we are today. So really informal. So as far as questions, feel free to jump in if you need to. Hensel Phelps, we're just quickly on the corporate environment. We're a $2.5 billion company, privately owned, comprising of 7 districts, starting from our Mid-Atlantic all the way to our California districts. And we started using Synchro around 2008. Like many of you, started with Procurement, right? So it's a great tool, and it's what we loved about it initially was the ability to communicate. And you take that 5,000 line item schedule, and then you bring a communication sequence to it, and it makes sense, and it takes you that much longer. I think if you didn't look at it visually and try to track the schedule. So initially, that's kind of what brought us into it, Procurement. And then we saw the value, and then started in 2009 going forward. These are some of the jobs that we kind of implemented. Here's a quick procurement effort. I think in this one here, we're just trying to show that it doesn't need to be complicated. That's one of the reasons why we initially brought Synchro. It can be just quick, easy, and intuitive. Here we just took a sketch, quickly created some massing, and then, in a couple of hours' time, I was able to put a sequence together and really communicate the sequence and the flow of work for this particular project. Again, very simple. We didn't have a model. All we had was a sketch from our designers. Within a couple hours, we were able to get a pretty decent presentation together. What I'm hoping to do, the way the ticker flows there, the top that chart, which is hopefully with this integration, maybe having a ticker for the cost as well, because that's what we thought would be really good for this. We kind of worked around it. You see a little fluctuation there in the presentation. This was done a while back. This was even before Synchro had the transparency tool, which they have today, which is phenomenal. But we wanted to show that as the building got darker, it was getting closer to completion. So there was a lot of workarounds that we did to get to this point. It wasn't perfect, but it definitely worked and got the point across. And now that Synchro has incorporated that tool, which is pretty well. Here's another effort. This is one recently that DeLacy did for another procurement effort. But in this one, we're showing that you can get complex. You can show that complexity beyond the simple and get pretty defined.
So this is the latest effort that we just completed. It was done in October of last year. So some of the things like this you're seeing where those buildings are being demoed, that tool is now available on the latest and greatest. But at the time we put this together, it was not. So like Ty was talking about, there were some workarounds. So we got a 22-page and paper proposal from the owner, happened to be Kaiser, and given about 2 weeks to put this all together. So the first week was put together the site logistics plans and a bunch of the stuff that went into the actual turned-in proposal. Our last week was all about the modeling. So myself, one superintendent, and then 2 modelers spent 1 week putting this all together. So like I said before, we had 22 pages. We did not have a model. We had a schedule that another superintendent put together in the first week, but we built this entire thing from scratch. So you have a very well-seasoned superintendent. I've been working with Synchro since 2008. I had a guy that is an expert at Revit, so he modeled everything. He masked all the buildings. And that week before we went out to the site, so we kind of got an idea of what all the buildings look like. But this effort was completely done in 1 week's time with one overnighter. But we put this all together. So a couple other things about this. I have another skin sequence that we'll go through it in a little bit. Put it all together. They wound up not even using it at the proposal, and we did not get a job. So pretty excited about that. So again, there was that now they have the removal tool. We actually had to use one of the paths to get those buildings to. So, but that was the latest and greatest effort that we just put together.
Okay, so integration, I think, starting with procurement, that's how we started back in 2008. And we got to the point in 2010 where we're at that point where we just continue to check that box, where we actually try to start using this tool for what it's, the value of it. And so at that point in time, I think we were standing on that cliff and, decided to jump, and we went to an enterprise solution with Synchro. So the deployment that was with every new job that starts, we are using it. And not only checking that box, but really using it for what it's intended for. You QC our schedule. I mean, visually, you run that sequence, and if there's something out of logic, or it doesn't make sense, it's right there in your face, right? And with every schedule that the first reaction that I get from the superintendents is, Synchro, there's something wrong with Synchro. And then we go back and look at the dates, and sure, there's a bust in the logic. So, great QC tool, a great tool for communication, intuitive. At Hensel Phelps, we don't have a scheduling department, and we don't have specialized groups. Our superintendents are schedulers, and they are the guys in the field. So, giving them a tool that is hard to use, and you would need a software degree to decipher, it doesn't work in our environment. So, the integration into our environment is important, with Synchro being a very intuitive tool to use. That was extremely important for us. Process, I think, beyond the software, I think, once you get into Synchro a little bit, the software's not the hard part. I mean, this isn't a pre-setup, right? So understand your schedule, really know what you're trying, at the end of the day, to communicate. Define your model content. You're not just going to bring a model in Synchro and all of a sudden you start linking away and things that's going to be perfect, right? So understand your schedule, define your model content, and within that have a process, whether you're updating, synchronizing between different computers or using different models and what format these models are in. Have all that up front, know your path, and stick to it, and it works a lot better that way. Do a lot of lessons learned. I think that we got to that point, which makes that process much more efficient.
Yeah, for that South Bay presentation that we put together, we put together a whole storyboard. We spelled out what the story was going to be, so that when my model was put together, the model, he knew exactly how I wanted it broken down, what I was going to show him. That we needed all of the structure. It was two different types of structure. We needed the exterior skin and how I was going to do all that. So we had to be on the same page, otherwise we would have wasted a lot of time.
Yeah, and the little things that gets everyone excited. I think our superintendents love to see dirt moving around. And I think it's kind of true when you see dirt going away. Like, man, if that wasn't the Synchro and gets engaged, it's a win-win. Training, once we integrated Synchro into our Hensel Phelps department, we created some custom job-specific training modules, integration into our yearly P6 training. Recently, a few months back, 120 superintendents. I was given 4 hours to teach Synchro. It was daunting, but it was done. They didn't walk out of it. They weren't experts at the end of the day, but you know what? They knew and understood the possibilities that what Synchro could do for them. That was the intent. Just the basic functionality. I took Synchro's training module, condensed it in 4 hours, but just the basic parameters of understanding your schedule, understanding content, bringing the model in, and then just once they saw the end of that 4th hour, the easy part was in assigning those caissons to the activity line. That's easy, right? But they understood that if you had it set up properly as far as content and you knew your schedule, the rest came pretty easy. So within that user group, that's really important, I think, is just you get it going on internally. Get the leads in each district or however company is set up to talk readily, lessons learned, things like that. Because you don't want everyone kind of starting from scratch. You want to build on what you've done that past year. So getting that communication going internally really helps. Synchro from day one has been completely supportive of anything that we needed, to the point where we've been on the phone, Rich and I, with their developers in Russia. They're that supportive. I don't see that much in the industry, and I deal with a lot of vendors out there, and that's that separation, I think, that also helps Synchro. And that's enough for me. This is going to be Rich, and specifically on the Kaiser Anaheim note.
All right, Ty, thanks for that warm introduction. Appreciate that. Apologize for my accent. I hope you guys can all understand me. We're going to do a case study on the Kaiser Anaheim project. Going to try and give you a different perspective, one from the field. Like I said, my name is Rich DeLacy with Hensel Phelps. I'm a project superintendent, and I've been working on the Anaheim project since 2008. So just a little bit on the project. That is the overall site layout. We actually got contracted first for the hospital, then the CUP, and we also got awarded the HSB. So there's 3 different buildings. There's an MOB on the project, as well as a parking structure that 2 different contractors worked on and put together. So the contract value for the hospital is $393 million. Started in 2008 with stone columns, and the projected completion completion is August of 2012, so coming up later this year, but August of 2012, keep that in mind, I'll get to that, go into that a little bit more later on. So the hospital itself, 434,000 square feet, everybody likes to know how many beds, 262 beds, 10 ORs, so it's a pretty sizable hospital. Central plant, this is the building that I personally work on. It was started out to be $41 million. It's 3 levels, just over 30,000 square feet. It is a CMU structure. Like I said, that final contract that we got awarded was the HSB. That was budgeted for $62 million, 177,000 square feet. So, going back, the first effort that I put together in 2008 was for the central plant. I had the schedule that I personally put together, and then the model from the architect, the engineers, as well as all of my subcontractors. So I said, great, I will take every single model that I get, and I will link every single all of them. We'll go into a little bit of lessons learned on that. There's definitely some challenges with that. The biggest being is getting this thing to run smoothly and run efficiently. So you can see that we modeled the excavations down to the slopes on it. There was certain requirements that you couldn't undermine footings and whatnot. So you can see the excavations for the tanks and whatnot. We saw the excavation go away for the building foundation. That represented when we backfilled that. So there was a lot of sequencing. Now, obviously, we didn't get models for those excavations. We had to have our in-house BIM guy or our BIMja. He took care of those for us. That's what we've named that guy. So you can see some sequencing issues. You saw that excavator being right underneath the crane. Obviously, that's not going to work. So it's crystal clear when you have sequencing issues. You can see them right away. And then you got to go back to your P6 schedule and revise those. So the other great features like the equipment moving around, that took a lot of time. Linking up all of the model took about 8 hours to go through and put all that effort together, and then probably about another 8 to 12 hours to fancy it up. And when I say fancy it up, I like to get that equipment to move around and follow the sequence of everything getting built, or the drill rig, getting all the cranes and whatnot in there. So when I first started, it was about 4 hours into it, and I went to delete an element, wound up highlighting the whole thing, and clicking the button, and poof, everything disappeared. And I panicked. I thought my computer was about to crash, so I hit save. And there was 4 hours of my life gone.
Yeah, I got that call on Saturday,
so one of the things that I do now is, as I'm going through and putting everything together, every day I start with saving a new file, and if I'm going to do like a new effort, like that crane going around or something like that, I'll do a version. We've got the generator. She goes, when I come in and I start drilling, I'm going to be throwing rocks, I'm going to be throwing dirt and everything all over the place. So in that buyout meeting, what you saw in this video, we were able to move him up 8 months in the schedule. So like I said, taking a small little piece of the entire model to convey your point. This saved us potentially a claim, some damage to the building, and also allowed us to move him up 8 months in the schedule.
Yeah, it's very rare that you get to a sub meeting and the subs are actually looking at these other specialty subs to see what they're doing. Especially they're just kind of concentrating on their scope of work. But what Rich said, they're giving them the visual sequence and showing all these other specialty subs around. It really kind of turns on that light bulb and gets that collaboration going. And solutions like this, what Rich went through.
Okay, so our next effort had another superintendent that went through and put together. And put together our exteriors in sequence. So he went through the same 8-hour training class that Ty and I went through, and was able to link up all of our plaster systems. So the gray represents the studs, the black is the black paper. You can see the yellow for the dense glass. You got your brown for your brown coat. You have every single element of that plaster system going in. So what did we use this for? Well, a couple things. Our owner was very concerned about links inside the building. We actually brought this sequence in our QC meeting and explained to him what our proposal was, what our sequence is. We had our plaster subcontractor sitting in there It gave the owner a warm and fuzzy that we knew what we were talking about, and we had a plan. We weren't just going to go out there and wing it. They could clearly see the plan. So this was a very powerful tool that we had. The second thing, we were able to find out that we needed a third plastering crew. That the 2 plastering crews that we were originally thinking wasn't going to be enough. We were going to need a third one in that center triangle. So again, this validated our crews, validated our schedule, and once again gave the owner a warm and fuzzy on what our plan was and what we were going to do. So this would be a longer video. So they were so excited about that. We turned around and did the exact same thing for the HSB. They wanted to see, once again, what our plan was, how we were going to go around the building. With the different user profiles, it makes it very easy to set up the black paper. In this case, we used purple board for the weatherproofing element of it. But you can clearly communicate in sub-meetings or whatever what the plan is and where you're planning on going. So, like I showed you guys in the South Bay video, we use it for procurements. Very, very powerful. So going back to some of the other lessons learned, that South Bay video that we were showing, make sure you're clear on what you're going to be utilizing. I wound up having one of the modelers, detail out all of the shoring to go around for the excavation. You wound up spending about 6 hours detailing all of that out. And when we went down and made it in the video, it only wound up being about a second of the video. So you got to make sure that you clearly communicate what your needs are and what you're trying to show, so that you don't waste time on modeling stuff that's not going to be utilized. At the end of the day, it just wasn't necessary. Talk about what's next. One of the efforts that I think that we should have done at this Kaiser project was doing all the site utilities in 4D. We did not do this. We wound up being on our 3rd area superintendent to put this work in place. By the time he got there, he had to hit the ground running, so he did not have the time to go through and make a 4D sequence. When I was building the central plant over here in the corner, that was probably one of my biggest challenges, not building the building itself, but coordinating with him on what he had to do and where he was going and where he was putting his utilities. I had my plan in my head, but it was very difficult in communicating what his plan is and where he was going to have an excavation, what utility was going to be in my way. So that was definitely one of our challenges. It would have been great to know, what excavation has to go first. You can't put that tank in or put those pipes in first. You're going to undermine them and go dig that tank. So it's crystal clear when you start putting all this information in 4D. Another great visualization is you really don't realize how big that excavation is going to be. So when we start, like I said, we model all of our excavations to make sure we don't undermine that footing. And so we know how big that excavation is going to be. And we can also use it inside the sub-meetings. You really get an idea of how large some of these excavations are. Just a couple other shots on the site utilities. So that's the effort that we did over at Kaiser. We also do this on several other procurements. Open it up to questions.
On your drywall or your outside, how did you realize?
As that video was playing, they tracked the starting points. You could see when the silver started, which represented the metal studs. You could see that at one point there was 3 of them, that there was 3 sequences going. So it made them realize that they needed a third plaster crew in order to do that.
What other questions you got? You got one here.
Did you use it during so major changes in the job? That's what's up.
Major changes? I wouldn't say major changes. It was more of a free planning tool. Kaiser was very good about not making changes. they told the user groups early on that this is what you're going to get. The few changes that we had were very minor, so we really didn't need to put anything into Synchro. The site utilities, they had some changes. They got some additional requests. So like I said, that one would have been a great effort if we would have had that. It would have made our job a lot easier. Some of the other things, this project, I mentioned that 2012 date, August. This project is actually scheduled. They accelerated us and paid for 2 months of acceleration. But in addition to that, we're going to finish this project 9 months early. So they paid for 2, and we're 7 months ahead of that. This project's actually going to finish in February 15th next month. And you saw the numbers on how much the project is going to cost. Those were all budget numbers. We're currently $50 million in their budget on this. So, which to Kaiser, that's a huge number. That's enough money for them to go out and build another MOB, another building, or whatnot. So they're very excited about that, and it's hopefully going to get us some more work done.
Last question.
When you said bringing about the details of the model, I just want to make sure that you're not saying don't bring detailed models. You're saying if you're bringing everything into the model, then don't go to the nut and bolt detail. But if you want to really model just one portion of it, you can bring in, or let's say if you are modeling a virtual market, then you can really bring that in and do the same sequencing, right?
Yes, I had probably 25 or 30 models, separate models, because each trade was a different model by floor. So probably 20 or 30 models that was wound up being brought into that. I wouldn't link everything. Like I would go through and grab that no-hub coupling and highlight all of them and delete every one of them. So either have your modeler do it in the background, or you can do it with Synchro. You got a couple different options. But you don't, for coordination, absolutely. You need all that stuff for Navisworks and coordination, but for this effort, it's too much. You're not conveying a message with every single one of those little elements. So, but you have a couple options of ways to do it. Anything else?
Okay. Well, thanks.